We all know what Minecraft is, and I'm assuming most of us have also heard of the Roman Empire, but very rarely do people think about these two things at the same time. So today, I will ask the question, how much time would it take for the Romans, who if you didn't know, were never recorded to have played video games in their history, to beat Minecraft? To answer this life-changing mystery, I will propose the following scenario. So imagine that it's 98 AD, the first year of Emperor Trajan's rule, who many consider to be the greatest period in the history of the empire. Things are looking good for the Romans until suddenly one day without warning, a computer running Minecraft survival mode appears near the central parts of Rome. Let's say this computer has today's top-of-the-line specs and peripherals, that it is indestructible and immovable, that it has a full desk setup to go along with it, that it somehow has a magical power source that keeps it running 24/7, and that it is impossible to close Minecraft or exit the world. The Romans would most definitely take interest in this contraption immediately because to them it will look incomprehensible. However, if we give them absolutely no previous instruction, there's a huge number of things that could go wrong. I mean, just imagine, these people have been farmers or whatever their entire lives and have never seen a piece of modern technology, so they're gonna be super confused and have no idea what to do with the setup. I think there's a pretty decent chance that they might even start worshipping the gaming setup, thinking that it's some kind of divine apparatus. They might even be too scared to go near it. I mean, you'd be scared too if something looking like a portal just appeared in your backyard. I don't even know how much time it would take them to realize that the keyboard and mouse are made of pressable buttons, and that the screen is in fact a screen and not some sort of gateway to hell. Of course, while all this is going on, the game is still running and Minecraft Steve would be killed by the first mob that shows up, so they would just be perpetually on the dead screen until they figure out how to use the mouse. Think about how much time it would take them to just simply realize that the chair is in fact a chair and not an alien torture device or something. I mean, it's not like their chairs were too different or that this would be the weirdest part of the setup to them, but still I think they would find it pretty weird, especially if you had to sit on it. I mean, you wouldn't sit down on anything, especially on this abomination of a chair. There's just infinite possibilities of things for them to mess up on if they don't know absolutely anything about computers, so to make this fair for them, let's say the setup comes with a little handbook included containing a Latin translation of these two Wikipedia pages, desktop computer and video games. Because if these things aren't included, they're just gonna be running around like headless chickens trying to do all sorts of weird things to the setup and everything's gonna go wrong. Okay, so now they know that what they're looking at is just a game, but it's still gonna take them a pretty long amount of time to figure out how to correctly use the computer. For the purposes of this video, I'm gonna assume that the Romans are going to do absolutely everything in their power to figure out what this thing is, and that is their #1 priority, which I don't think is unreasonable. I mean, just imagine what we would do if an unknown futuristic looking machine appeared in the middle of Italy. So taking everything I've said so far into account and assuming that they do indeed put all of their efforts into researching the computer instead of just making it a temple or something, I think it's somewhat reasonable to say that the best case scenario, it would take them about 4 months give or take to figure out that they have to sit in the chair, facing the computer and press the buttons with their hands. Or rather, I guess the better way to say it is that it would take them this amount of time to realize that what they have to do must be done within the screen and it has nothing to do with the physical setup itself. Which I know, 4 months seems like a lot of time to do something most infants are comfortable doing, but honestly I think that might even be too generous because the Romans haven't even seen a modern desk before, let alone a full-on gaming setup, and just imagine everything that they would try doing before realizing they just had to sit down. And that's not mentioning that, believe it or not, the Wikipedia page for desktop computer does not include an in-depth guide to positioning your body and fingers correctly. Now the next thing is figuring out the correct way to use the mouse and keyboard, which honestly I think is one of the most intuitive parts of this process, assuming that they don't assign a left-handed guy to do this. However, since they don't have any previous knowledge of computers, I think it's gonna be way harder for them to figure out how to use the mouse and keyboard if they don't know the controls of the game. So I'm going to say that they're going to learn both things at the same time. Now it's obviously going to be pretty difficult for them to actually learn the controls and most importantly actually figure out how video game logic works. So to make it fair for the Romans, because evidently they're about to suffer the most ridiculous learning curve in history, let's say that the game is in Latin, which I was surprised to learn is actually a language that comes included in vanilla Minecraft. I'm not really sure who needed this to be added into the game, but I'm not complaining. This would make things a lot easier as they would be able to actually have some understanding of what they're looking at. Now they still have to figure out the controls, which would probably be ridiculously hard. I mean, if you've played video games with someone that has never played video games before, you'll know that they can barely do anything, let alone do two things at once, even if it's something super simple like jumping while running. Now imagine how much worse that must be for someone who has been a farmer their entire life and has never even seen a screen before, let alone heard about video games. It's gonna be pretty tough. The Romans are gonna have to build an entirely new set of motor skills, because they've never done anything even remotely similar to this. This is when things start to get really tough for the Romans. Some of you might have heard of the hypothetical scenario. If we gave a monkey a typewriter and let it type for an infinite amount of time, how long would it take for it to write the entire works of Shakespeare? And you might think this is a similar situation, but let me tell you, unless it's the luckiest monkey of all time, there's no chance it's writing all that randomly before the heat death of the universe. Meanwhile, the Romans, while they're not exactly known for being esports legends, have some very elementary, very shallow understanding of what they're doing because of the notes we gave them, which is already infinitely more than the stupid monkey has. Also, unlike replicating Shakespeare's works word for word, there is no set in stone way of beating Minecraft. Now, this doesn't mean it's not gonna take a ridiculous amount of time. However, there are a few things that could potentially make their mission just a little bit easier. The first being toasts. When I say toast, I'm not referring to the bread, but rather to these little annoying things in the top right that for some reason you can't turn off and show up at the most unnecessary times. But for the Romans, this would actually be a game changer, as it would give them some basic information that would help them get accustomed to the controls. It would also give them knowledge of the fact that they have an inventory, which is pretty important. The second thing is the recipe unlock pop-ups and the recipe book. Without these two, I think it would be basically impossible for them to find out how to craft. So yeah, they can craft a very limited amount of things now, but it's a start. And that's it. Those are basically the closest things Minecraft has to a tutorial. And there is not much else that helps the Romans figure out what they need to do next. And they're missing the most important piece of information that you and I have, and that's that the game can be beaten in the first place. What if they just spend the rest of eternity building houses? From now on, it's gonna have to be all trial and error for them to figure out the game mechanics and master the controls, which is gonna take a while. This is a huge problem because unlike the monkey, the Romans are not immortal. And I'm unsure how they would go about choosing someone to be the one to actually play the game, so I'm gonna assume they're going to assign their best team of scientists and that they'll dedicate their life to nothing other than finding a way of beating this game. Now, I think it's gonna be basically impossible for them to achieve this in their lifetime. The average life expectancy in Rome was somewhere around 30, but there's a reason that's an average, and it's because a whole lot of children died very early into their lives. So in reality, if you made it past your childhood, you could probably live until your 40s. So let's say your scientists are real lucky guys and that they make it to 50 years old. If they started playing the game at 25, that means they have a full 25 years to find a way to beat the game. To me, that just seems like way too little time, taking into account the sheer amount of things that you can do in this game that they would try. Especially considering that these men lack knowledge of game mechanics that are so second nature to us that we don't even think about them when we're playing. Every mob they encountered for the first few years would probably kill them. They would constantly die of hunger, and every block, item, and structure they found, no matter how useless it is an opportunity for them to think they found something revolutionary. For example, what happens if they somehow end up crafting a compass? Mind you, compasses reached Europe in the 12th century, so they would not know what it is. They might think, no way, I found out how to beat the game. I just have to follow this red arrow. And they would go north until they reach the world border, which would probably take them several years. And there are just so many things like this that could happen because they lack a basic understanding of the game. They wouldn't even know how to get to the nether because surprisingly there is nothing in the game to indicate how or why you have to go there. Even on the off chance that through thousands of sleepless nights of trial and error they get to the stronghold, what if they just don't know how to light the portal? To me, them being able to beat the game without previous knowledge of anything just seems too far-fetched. I'm assuming most people watching this video have played Minecraft, and odds are you already knew a lot of things about the game even before opening it for the first time. Things you might have heard from YouTubers, friends, or whatever. Even worse is that it's really common for people who have been playing the game for years and know all about it to have never beat it. Which isn't wrong, everyone can enjoy the game however they want, but it shows that Minecraft really doesn't guide you to beating the dragon. And that's the sort of thing that you have to already know how to do. Even worse is, the Romans still have to pass their knowledge of the game down through their generations, because of course, they would need several lifetimes to complete it. Which honestly, it would be really funny for archaeologists to find. Just imagine one day on the news, archaeologists find ancient Roman drawings of Minecraft villager. But yeah, even if they pass down their knowledge and create Minecraft gaming schools or whatever, I think it would take them basically an eternity, definitely way more than it would take for the Roman Empire to fall. So in conclusion, Minecraft's lack of a tutorial wins, the Romans lose. But wait, there is another way. So far, I've been talking about the Java edition of Minecraft, which I and most YouTubers use. But I failed to acknowledge Bedrock edition, which in my surprise some of you to learn is actually the most played edition of Minecraft. Which honestly makes sense because it can run on basically anything. And this version had a tutorial. Well, it's not really much of a tutorial, it's more of a tutorial world that teaches you the basics, but still, I think as long as they avoid all the microtransactions, this could be pretty useful for the Romans. Unfortunately though, they removed it. And yeah, I guess you could say, what if they had the legacy edition of Minecraft Bedrock? And maybe that would shave off like a few months of learning the controls, but there was also no tutorial on how to beat the game, so yeah, it's still gonna take them a ludicrous amount of time. The only way I can see them realistically beating the game before the Empire falls is if you gave them one of those Minecraft guidebooks and you had it translated to Latin. Then yeah, they could probably get it done within like a few centuries. So that's it guys, how long would it take the Romans to beat Minecraft? Too long to count. They would probably still be trying to this day. I'm really sorry if this answer is disappointing to you, but there's just so many things that could go wrong, and the only way for us to really find out the answer to this question would be to go back in time and actually try it out. Anyway, thank you so much for watching till the end. This is my first video ever, so if you for some reason like this kind of content, you could subscribe. Okay, bye.